It's Word Time with Princess.
The biggest prophecy that will determine your future are your friends. Show me your friend and I'll tell you who you are.
Every Sunday by 5 p.m. Follow us on this social media platforms: Facebook, Princess Chidiera Job; YouTube, Word Time with Princess. We inspire you to a great height.
Hi everybody, welcome to another beautiful time with Princess. Okay, last week we looked at credibility. Of course, we tried to drive home what credibility is all about. Okay, and letting us understand that leaders should, first of all, have credibility, and the foundation of every leadership is credibility. So a leader should have credibility. A leader should have character. Last week we looked at credibility. So today we're going to be looking at competence in leadership. Competence in leadership. Leadership is not for the novice. Leaders are readers, and reading gives you an edge over your followers. Okay, leadership is not for novice. It's not for people who do not know anything. Okay, leaders are readers, and reading gives you an edge over your followers. Okay, leadership requires competence and capacity to deliver the job. So you cannot be a novice in leadership. Alright, for you to be able to lead effectively, you need to first of all avail yourself the opportunity or be able to leverage on other people. Okay, we have your role models. Okay, you need to actually give yourself that room where you submit yourself to their teaching. 1, 2, give yourself to reading. When you have something you need to, for instance, you have something you need to talk about or teach on, you don't start talking about it or start rehearsing it on that day. All right, you make researches. All right, you go back to read. So leaders are not novices. They are not illiterates. Okay, they are not illiterates. Another word for competence is capacity, ability, skill, and training. So another word for competence is capacity, ability, skill, and training. Now, if you must be effective in your leadership position, then you need to be trained. When we talked about discipleship, I let us know that the reason for lack of transfer is because of discipleship. What do I mean? People do not want to be trained again. They don't want to serve anybody. They don't want to be taught. Alright, so if you must actually be effective, then you need to give yourself to training, give yourself to training, and also skill, learning new things, exposing your mind to new things. You cannot manage a leadership position very well without going through training. And while training, okay, now why do we train? To build capacity to do. Do you understand me? Okay, you cannot manage a leadership position very well without going through training. And why do we train? To build capacity to do things Jesus began to teach. He first began to do. So you cannot tell people possibly what you do not have knowledge of. You don't have knowledge of something. You can't possibly pass the message. He started with his earthly parents. Remember, his earthly father was a carpenter, and he learned the job, which also enabled him to be able to manage people when he eventually became a leader. Now, his earthly father was a carpenter. Now, as a carpenter or as a worker, all right, you will have customers or clients that will come to you, people who are maybe temperamental, or who are hot-tempered or something like that, or people who do not have patience. Now, Jesus was able to learn from his father, was able to learn well, so that when he became a leader, or when he becomes a leader, he would know how to manage people. You cannot lead who is better than you. You cannot lead who is better than you. Do you understand me? So if you must actually be a leader, then you need to first of all learn how to manage people, because people people will, sweep you off your feet. People will annoy you. People will do all sort of things, in a leadership position. But it takes a trained man. It takes a man who is intelligent, who is intellectually smart, and otherwise to be able to handle people effectively. Looking at Jesus' life as a leader, he didn't just have credibility, he also had capacity to do. Acts of the Apostles chapter 1 verse 1 told us about what he began to do and to teach. So first, Jesus began to do before he started teaching. So don't just teach, do. Okay, so the things Jesus began to do, and to teach. So before he started, teaching, he started doing first. Okay, he started practicing. Leadership requires a lot of doing, and you cannot do except you have the capacity to do. Not everybody has developed the capacity to do. All right, so leadership requires a lot of doing, and you cannot do except you have the capacity. So you don't just come out, I am a music minister, I am a minister of the word, or I am a leader in that leadership position in the government or anything, without you going back to search. Now, for instance, as a music minister, you cannot just come out and you cannot come out and just pick up and just start singing. You must have a role model, someone who you actually leverage on the person's way or teaching. The same with me or other ministers. You cannot just come out and you have a role model. You have someone you're looking at. You have someone who you are under his teaching. Now, even in the government, you cannot just come out and say you want to rule or you want to be a leader. First of all, you would go back and check, people who have learned people before, know where they did not get it, know where they got it, and then put it together. Then that will not give you an edge to know what to do and what not to do in a leadership position. Okay, Jesus raised 12 men. He turned them into world changers because he had built capacity. Remember, they were imperfect men with their issues, but he transformed them into fishers of men. Okay, Jesus raised 12 men. Remember, those 12 men were not perfect. They were not perfect people, but he raised them. You cannot raise people. You cannot train people if you've not submitted yourself to training. You cannot build someone if you've not first of all built yourself up. Do you understand? So he raised men and they became the fishers. He transformed them to fishers of men and world changers. Okay, let's look at areas of competence. The first one I have here is spiritual capacity. Okay, we're looking at the areas of competence. The first one I'd like you to note is spiritual capacity. Every leader must have an altar. Godly or demonic altar. You are not supposed to stay neutral. It's either you dey church or you dey shrine. You understand? Last, it's either na church you dey or na shrine you dey. So you're supposed to have a backing. You're supposed to get person where they back you. Someone who is interceding, who is speaking into your life. So it's either you are in a church, it's either it's a godly one or a demonic one, but you are not permitted to stay neutral. As a leader, one of the areas of competence is first of all having spiritual capacity. And I said that you are not supposed to stay neutral. It's either you're on the godly side or the demonic. It's either you have the godly altar or the demonic altar. Okay, nothing stands on its own without a spiritual influence backing it. Did you hear that? Nothing stands on its own without a spiritual influence backing it. Every leadership is as strong as the strength of the altar backing it. Every leadership or every leader is as strong as the altar backing them. If your altar is not strong, if you're not rooted and grounded in your altar, that ministry will fall. You don't just come out, you're just doing it, and you don't have someone who you are accountable to, someone who can actually speak for you spiritually. So if you don't have a strong altar, that position will fall. It's either you will misuse it, or the money you will be getting will now start ruling over you. Do you understand me? So every leader or every leadership is as strong as the strength of the altar backing it, and the leader there is the spiritual priest. Okay, every leadership is as strong as the strength of the altar backing it, and the leader there is the spiritual priest. Cultivate the habit of speaking into your ministry. Whether you are in the government, whether you are the president of the country, or the governor, or the chief of whatever, or chief of staff or whatever, learn to speak into your that position is your own ministry. As a music minister, learn to speak words into your ministry. As a hairstylist, learn to speak words there. Learn to pray. You command customers. Say someone is, someone will be like my colleague, or the person next door is getting more customers or more audience than I am getting. Very simple. There's no need for you to be jealous. There's no need for you to feel bad. Just speak words. Go to God. Okay. Your leadership will be ineffective if you have not developed spiritual muscles to handle issues that may challenge your organization. Your leadership will be ineffective if you have not developed spiritual muscles to handle issues that may challenge your organization. Okay, so that your leadership may be ineffective if you not develop the spiritual capacity, the spiritual muscles, to actually work and challenge those things. If you're not able to pray or develop your own altar, there are some certain challenges that will come, and they will challenge your organization. By so doing, it might fall. Okay, it might fall, or maybe issues will start rising. So you need to develop spiritual muscles. All right, the second point I have here is emotional capacity. Leaders are not reactors, rather they manage issues maturely. Leaders are not reactors, they maintain their cool, they manage their emotions, rather they manage issues maturely. If you must be a leader, you must be someone of a matured mind. You must be able to handle things maturely. It's not everything that you must react to. It's not everything that should get you angry. It's not everything that should get you angry. It's not everything that that you must call people names or get angry. Some things you manage them, and you handle them maturely. Jesus was a leader with a stable emotion. Look at what Jesus did for the woman caught sleeping with another man. Now, rather than consenting to their killing her, he said, "Neither do I condemn you." It takes a leader with emotional capacity to endure what she did and give her a second chance. How many of the leaders today would be like Jesus, or how many of the leaders today are like Jesus? He said, neither do I condemn you. He didn't consent to them killing her. Now, but in leadership positions today, we see leaders who will condemn, judge, and even pass out orders for the person to be killed or burnt alive or burnt to death. They will stone the person, set the person ablaze, and then most people, see, Jesus was like, who among you have not sinned? Why would you judge another person? It takes a leader of a matured mind. You see people today even take laws into their own hands. You caught someone doing something for someone stole something, you naked the person. That is wrong. It is wrong. And it is also wrong for a leader to consent to such a thing. Jesus gave that woman a second chance. Go and sin no more. So how many of the leaders will do that today? In this our generation. So we need to learn wisdom from what Jesus did. We need to learn wisdom from what Jesus did for that woman. Okay. It takes a leader with emotional capacity to endure what she did and give her a second chance. There is difference between being principled and wickedness. Did you hear me? There is a difference between being principled and simply being wicked. Every leader of men must be flexible because you are dealing with imperfect beings. Every leader of men must be flexible. We are not perfect. We are human beings. We make mistakes. So you need to be flexible. You need to be able to, understand that this person is not perfect. There is always a tendency that, okay, you will make mistakes. The next thing you're going to be looking at is intellectual capacity. The next thing you're going to be looking at, and the last one, is intellectual capacity. This is paramount in leadership. Your level of exposure with the recent happenings around the area or field of your leadership. Okay. This point also includes spiritual intelligence, your ability to discern things even before they happen. So your ability to, expose your mind to the recent things that is happening. Now, maybe you were in the politics, and then you don't. Okay, for instance, someone in the politics. For instance, somebody in the politics. You are in politics, but yet you do not know that we are in the season of election. Does it make sense? I mean, it is assumed that you should know all these things. Someone in a leadership position, maybe let's also take the government or in the politics. You do not know who the people or who is actually trending that people wants to vote for. Does it make sense? So it is assumed that as you're there, you should know all these things. Okay, a lawyer who doesn't know the things happening in the government, or a law student who doesn't have knowledge of some certain things happening around in the government sector and otherwise, it doesn't make sense. I mean, people assume that you should know all these things. You should be acquainted with this. You should you should have a level of exposure of some certain things. Okay, so it is expected of you to have a level of exposure of the recent happenings around the area or field of your leadership. Okay, it also points out to spiritual intelligence, that is your ability to discern things even before they happen. There are some things that you would see. You don't just take them normally. You need to, talk to God about it. You need to trade cautiously because you have seen it or it is going to happen. But most times our spirit will tell us something and we kind of ignore it or just leave it. And then that thing ends up happening. Be like, my mind told me this thing. Now, if you were sensitive enough, you should have actually known what to do when that thing came to you. So that is discerning. A leader who has been exposed to intellectual capacity will outdo a leader who has physical strength. A leader who has been exposed to intellectual capacity will outdo a leader who has just physical strength. Mental maturity gives you an edge over your subjects. Someone who just has physical capacity, you're just building yourself, you're just becoming fat, becoming big, and all of this. Someone who is intellectually smart will outdo you. And then, the person will get more connection. You'll be like, what is this one doing? The person is actually using his smartness. Okay, the person is smarter. There's a difference between someone who spends his time leveraging and someone who just spends his time eating. You will definitely see the difference. Okay. Mental maturity gives you an edge over your subject. It gives you an edge. It makes you smarter, and wiser. This also gives you the capacity to read and write. You cannot lead men who knows more than you do. I told you before, I said you cannot lead who is better than you. You cannot lead people who know more than you know. Okay, you can't lead them. They will keep telling you that they know more. That is why you need to strive. You need to stretch yourself to know more. What makes you a leader is you being ahead of men around you. What makes you a leader is you having the capacity to actually be ahead of people. What makes you a good leader is you having the capacity and also knowing more, being ahead. Imagine in a class where a teacher comes to teach, and then a particular student will be like, I've read this, I know it. Now that student went back to actually research, to read, and to know more. Okay. Alright, so there are other areas of competence. But we're going to stop here. We're going to stop at this juncture, at this point.
It's Word Time with Princess.
The biggest prophecy that will determine your future are your friends. Show me your friend and I'll tell you who you are.
Every Sunday by 5 p.m. Follow us on this social media platforms: Facebook, Princess Chidera Job; YouTube, Word Time with Princess. We inspire you to a great height.